Mortal Kombat, the franchise most hated by boomer parents, politicians, and the mainstream media. The vast majority of kids who discovered the franchise in the 90s has many disputes with their families and parents on playing this game. I could say that I am no exception, as I had my fair share of this as well. I would go as far as saying I may have a little too much of an obsession, but I probably wouldn't be making this video if I wasn't. I could go on, but that's probably for another time. I didn't really start with the first game, as I discovered it laterwards after my first Mortal Kombat game being Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and then I ended up playing Mortal Kombat 4 and Mythology Sub-Zero. It was only afterwards that I found a copy of Mortal Kombat 2 for the Super Nintendo and the arcade cabinet of the first game. One time I went overseas and found Special Forces for the PlayStation 1 there, only having to be able to play it on a European PS1. So I have enjoyed the hell out of the franchise. I know what many of you are thinking right now. I have a lot of nostalgia and early childhood memories of Mortal Kombat, but the title of the video implies that I find it to be burdensome. Don't get the wrong idea. I enjoy and find a spot with the first entries of the 90s, but there's more to this. I seem to find that Mortal Kombat as a franchise has been overall underappreciated for the longest time until Mortal Kombat 9 in 2011. And I truly think overall, nostalgia in the fan base has caused many missed opportunities that really could have broadened the lore and many other factors for the franchise. That's right, I'm talking about what's most famously referred to as the 3D era of Mortal Kombat. I'm talking Mortal Kombat 4 or Gold, Deadly Alliance, Deception or Unchained, and Armageddon respectively. As amazing and lovable as I find the storyline and characters for Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, I truly believe that Mortal Kombat 4 through Armageddon can easily be comparable, and that is despite of John Tobias leaving Midway in the year 2000. I understand that the 3D era is heavily criticized by fans for its gameplay, which I can say is fair. However, it's not fair to pretend that it wasn't flawed in games prior or even afterwards, because there's definitely lots of them on other games and other franchises. The competitive scene for Mortal Kombat comes naturally. It's hit or miss, but even if they were made not to have a competitive scene in mind, one was still made. The 3D era still had an opportunity. Sure, some may have hitbox troubles, like Mortal Kombat Deception in its initial release. The criticism of gameplay is fair, as gameplay is essential to video games. But to single the era out just for the fact that it was 3D is not fair criticism. The biggest effect of the franchise were the characters introduced in the 3D era. This is the factor I am talking about as far as nostalgia comes. Technically speaking, the characters Quan Chi and Shinnok, my favorite villains more so than Shao Kahn, were introduced earlier than the 3D era started. Quan Chi was introduced in the kids' spin-off cartoon Defenders of the Realm. Shinnok was mentioned in Noob Saibot's bio or ending in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy. There was then boss fights in the 2.5D side-scrolling prequel or spin-off Mythology Sub-Zero, and then playable characters and bosses in Mortal Kombat 4. They were highly praised characters, not so much the others. Jarek just came off as a meme, which I understand, saying he was a Kano clone, and that hilarious ending and voice acting.
Hey, wait! This is brutality! You can't do it! Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
But that still gives off the appeal to explore the characters more. Kai seemed to be a one and done and perhaps a generic Black Liu Kang, but understanding with hardware limitations from the 90s. It's a challenge to push the hardware to its limits, especially in those times. You then have Reiko, who is a reskinned new Saibot, but does have a black story that is easily explorable. It's very saddening that all Mortal Kombat characters except Tanya were burdened until Armageddon, where every previously playable character returned by force in its time. Unfortunately, they still have not given any spotlight of sort ever since Armageddon. Reiko have cameos in comics and movies, a well-requested character for return to the game since 2011, and still nothing. Fujin, who was an introduced character in the pre-beginning of the 3D era, also had some procrastinations in being reintroduced. Rumored to be a long-term Raiden replacement in the 3D era and the DLC speculation since Mortal Kombat 9, until finally in Mortal Kombat 11. To note, the rumor of him being Raiden's replacement I am unable to confirm if true or not, but I have read it in a wiki. If any confirmation can be made, please let me know in the comments below. Deadly Alliance is the start of the full 3D shift. New characters include Rime, Boraicho, Kenshi, Malvado, Nitara, Suhao, Drummond, Frost, and Blaze. Mocap is not counted for obvious reasons. The story was to stop Quan Chi and resurrect Shang Tsung for bringing back a murderous king that Shao Kahn overthrew a long time ago. They killed off Liu Kang, which made some folks unhappy. But nothing wrong with some changes in the pace, so now Kung Lao is the protagonist, who I much prefer from the beginning. Back to the rumor that I read about, but cannot confirm, it was never explained about Fujin's absence, as Raiden resigned his elder godhood for his old job. Nowhere to be seen, Fujin just vanished. Kai supposedly has his own thing going, which is fine. No explanation on Reiko. Quan Chi was the only returning Mortal Kombat 4 character, with 11 new characters introduced. All but Mocap took up almost half of the roster. Bo Raicho is either loved or hate. I love him as a Dragon Fist playstyle, personally. His crude humor from barfs and farts are not a big deal for me, especially if you're going to have a Hollywood douchebag character like Johnny Cage be in the franchise. Nothing against Johnny Cage, by the way. I truly believe that adding in an additional mentor figure for the main characters of the franchise, being Liu Kang and Kung Lao, builds character and a lore that would make a little more sense. Other characters were from concepts that are extremely fitting without issue. Kenshi is the most popular of the bunch. Same with Lime and Boraicho as they return from Deception. Nitara is a vampire, exiled from her own realm and trying to get back. Drama is a warlord who went through so much imaginable pain and torture for a millennium that caused him to be beyond berserk and had to be calmed with a mask. Shu Hao, okay, it's a meme, but honestly can still be explored like Mavado. Deception comes in, and you literally have the concepts of law and chaos by characters with the names of Havoc and Hotaru. Nowhere to be returned after Armageddon, yet still highly requested for return since Mortal Kombat 9. You have a literal church lady demon slayer Ashra, Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai, and you have these others that I see what many may mean in terms of effortless additions. I will admit that, but Dairu's fatality is very memorable, and I believe the three have reimagining opportunities for future games, considering their links in the lore with the Realm of Order, except Kira, who is a black member dragon like Kabal and Cobra. Then we have Taven and Dagon, Edenian demigods with destiny of restoring balance. So the question is this: what went wrong with the characters mentioned and introduced just to have them be recycled? Were the fans on their own with a gameplay that they did not bother to explore the lore of the 3D era? Do they really find them unlikable? With the characters at the end of the day standing out and out in physical experience as of Armageddon, I still have trouble understanding why no improvements can be made if they're really flawed. The past 10 years ever since Mortal Kombat 9, it appears that Ed Boon and NetherRealm Studios intends to have as a request from the fanbase that does favor the lore by other classics. Now, along the NetherRealm Studios era, a handful of characters surely had a share of reimagining. Striker was definitely seen as a joke in both Mortal Kombat 3 and Armageddon, and is now a badass later on. Boraicho was slimmer and much more agile for his weight, being a drunken master with lightheartedness being toned down and was praised positively. Frost's conversion to be a cyber ninja to keep Sub-Zero as a ninja was a great compromise. Jurek was no longer a Kano clone, and Reiko was no longer a Noob Saibot clone. That was as of Armageddon. These examples are perfect indications of opportunities and optimism on already established characters. Quan Chi was expected for Mortal Kombat 9 due to story purposes, and they were quite nice enough to give us Kenshi as DLC. I know Mortal Kombat 9 was a game for the nostalgia factor, and an excellent one at that. I was overall thankful for the game indeed. I just truly believe that with Shinnok's in-game model existing for the story's ending, he could have been DLC and saved Freddy Krueger for a Jason vs. Freddy match in Mortal Kombat 10. Speaking of Mortal Kombat 10, this was a game expected to bring in some opportunity based on story alone, but still decided to troll the 3D era fans with hints and just waste the 3D models coming from NetherRealm Studios. While Kenshi is back and Shinnok is a playable character, what is the point of having a 3D model of people like Fujin if he is not to be playable at all? Why do the same thing for Li Mei and Serena? Tanya was DLC, and Bo Raicho later on, thankfully. Bo Raicho even ended up being my main. The potential was still wasted and all for naught for the other characters mentioned. One more opportunity, which I was certain it'd be the time to shine finally, was in Mortal Kombat 11. But it's actually a bigger middle finger to us fans. I have always been disappointed with Mortal Kombat 11, and for more reasons than just the roster. Fun gameplay, don't get me wrong, but lots of disappointment, and that's for a different video in the possible near future. Mortal Kombat 11 took away some of the best characters from Mortal Kombat X in favor of nostalgia and the same vanilla-sized roster, which is definitely inexcusable. I'd rather play as Kenshi, Ermac, Bo Raicho, and Kong Jin than I would play as Jackie Briggs, the Collector, and Geras. It's another big middle finger that the only 3D rep is finally Fujin outside of Frost, and with massive leaks, hints, and marketing opportunities to give us other fighters of the era, NetherRealm stopped support of Mortal Kombat 11 earlier this year. Now, this is not something I blamed them for, as I very likely believe that this was due to the merger of Warner Media and the talks of the sell-off. Similar as to why we didn't get the promised DLC for Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. We were able to get Mortal Kombat 10 comics, and some of the characters from the era were just there to get killed off within pages like they are nothing. Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion Revenge showed Nitara for 3 seconds and no fight. Mortal Kombat 2021 had Nitara and Reiko. To watch my review on the movie, click on the link in the description below or on the top right hand corner of the video. Nitara was not even there for 2 minutes and gets killed off without a fight. A big disappointment, and I did give blame to those who were critical of the era. I do apologize for the harshness, but I have a hard time understanding why. Reiko was treated just a tad bit better, but even I had a bad feeling of the treatment aside from the portrayal of the character in the movie itself. Now, how will the characters of the era appearing in Mortal Kombat Battle for the Realms be treated? We have Li Mei and Reiko so far according to the trailer, but will they be half-assed? Consider the movie a referendum when it comes out in this month. I definitely find a lot of trouble for what I am seeing appears to be a big nostalgia bias that I have never seen in other franchises overall, except maybe Star Fox when it comes to gaming. The point in this discussion is that we're showing developers not laying in the beds they made, and it's pretty sad. I completely understand that change isn't for everybody, but over-recycling of characters and lore can get boring. While Mortal Kombat 11's gameplay was great for the most part, I'm not going to lie and say it's one of the best. It's extremely flawed, and I truly believe that the lackluster roster played a big role. Mortal Kombat 10 was made to make the way for at least 2 of the combat kits introduced to take over, or at least take the helm for one plot. With Cassie Cage, I didn't expect both Sonya and Johnny to return, but just have one of them to be absent, or both in that matter. With Jax having multiple arcade endings showing his death, it may have been given to have him stay home for once. However, the nostalgia character stayed, leaving no room for the older established characters to return. It is even more insulting to take Kenshi out all the way just to not even include Takeda. Mortal Kombat seems to have more than one crisis along the nostalgia bait. With the use of guest characters in the last couple games, it definitely has appalled some of the fans with resources and budgets that could be used for actual established Mortal Kombat characters. Even Ed Boon in interviews with Mortal Kombat 11 has acknowledged the number of established characters exceeding 70, so we could be getting a handful of each era, right? Nope. Speaking of Mortal Kombat 11, I think an identity crisis is being showed off too. The theme of the game is very lighthearted, even more so than ever. The time-traveling cliche is also out of place when it comes to the story, but that's not necessarily the big problem. Mortal Kombat has always been a franchise whose lore has explored and rendered many mythologies and other concepts from many Eastern cultures, especially Japanese and Chinese. Liu Kang is always known as the main protagonist, along with Raiden and Kung Lao. The last few games, including Mortal Kombat names, seems to have watered down those characters. The bigger spotlight given has oddly been characters associated with the Special Forces, and for a franchise with heavy Asian emphasis in martial arts, the focus went off and put in a lot of guns. Supernaturals and mythologies are what make Mortal Kombat stand out from other fighting games. To get away from the niche jeopardizes quality. If done in the short term or in other forms of media from mainline video games, I can get behind, but this has gone on for 10 years. I definitely hope that changes will be made for Mortal Kombat 2. I definitely believe that the franchise will still be a favorite and have a spot for me. However, I am definitely going to be firm and say that as a longtime fan, the direction it is going now is very disappointing. I'm looking forward to see how Battles of the Realm will turn out, and how the treatment will come from the 3D era, which needs as much love as it should get right about now. If you do have some thoughts of this, I would love to hear it in the comment section. For more videos like these and other content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to be caught up. I appreciate everybody staying tuned in, and I will be back for more.